I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here in the Hub Culture studio. It's Davos 2023. Delighted to have a repeat guest. Ravin, how are you?
Good, thanks, Edie. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm very well. Ravin Jesuthasan, you are author and global transformation leader at Mercer. I want to know, first of all, Ravin, the theme this year in Davos is it's cooperation, collaboration in a fragmented world. What does that theme mean to you in how you work?
So it means, I think, two really interesting things here in Davos. And as you know, Evie, the two anchor initiatives here have been the Climate Initiative and the goal of planting 1 trillion trees, and the Future of Work Initiative and the goal of improving employability for over 1 billion people. And we've been actively involved on the latter of those, where Mercer has worked with the World Economic Forum on the Good Work Framework. And the Good Work Framework, which has been signed up to by a bunch of organizations, really underpins that goal of improving employability for all. It's a collective and a collaborative effort to improve fair pay and social justice, flexibility and protection for the workforce, to improve well-being, to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to improve employability and creating a learning culture.
So those are really high-level goals. Yep. The other thing that I wanted to bring to this conversation is that your research has showed that the biggest risk to businesses this year, 2023, is long-run workforce instability. So great work going on, huge risk. How do you unpack all of that?
Yeah, it's such a fascinating question, Edie, because since the pandemic, since we probably last we were here, the pace with which things have changed around the future of work has just accelerated exponentially. Things we talked about for decades came to fruition with flexible and remote work, and you're seeing business leaders really struggle. And that's what that research revealed. We talked to hundreds of CEOs and CFOs, and the real concern for 50% of them was that the work model, as they called it, was no longer fit for purpose. Their traditional rules of how people worked and where they worked didn't really apply. The workforce was looking for something very different than what their organizations could provide. And as we've been talking about, the pace with which automation, whether it's robotics in frontline industries like retail, fast-moving consumer goods, food service, as well as knowledge work in the form of solutions like ChatGPT-3, are presenting leaders with even more challenges and choices.
I think if you flip the cameras around and talk to everybody in this studio about the impact of ChatGPT on their work, you'd get some incredible stories. What have you seen? What are you using it for? I'll start with that, and then I want to know, what are you scared about?
Yeah, so what am I using it for is I'm starting to work on my next book, my 5th, and I'm starting to experiment with using ChatGPT-3 to stimulate ideas, thoughts, to present new avenues of thinking, etc. So it's been quite interesting and eye-opening in that regard. The thing that really scares me, and we wrote extensively about this in my 3rd book, Reinventing Jobs, where we looked at how AI and automation comes in, is we need leaders with a much more humanistic view of automation, because if all you are chasing is the profit imperative, the potential to make some incredibly profitable but really damaging decisions for the long term is certainly there today. And what we need leaders to understand is, where does automation create the very real potential to substitute? Where does it create the potential to make us as individuals better? And improving the potential of those of us in the creative spaces with tools like that, as opposed to looking at them as purely substitution.
I mean, I've seen some incredible papers written with it, for example, by venture capital companies. I've seen people use it for film scripts. You're talking about using it potentially for your book. I imagine teachers must be terrified of this. But does it offer an opportunity for how we could teach or learn differently? Absolutely.
I think with every challenge like this, there's an opportunity if we frame it and put the right guardrails around it.
And like what?
So for example, from a learning perspective, we know that now students at all ages, of all levels, are going to be able to sort of solve problems that in the past they were left to some very limited tools for. Now, the span of control that they have, the span of responses that they can garner is going to increase exponentially. So how do we shift from measuring memory, from measuring your ability to work independent of tools, to now looking at, do you have the ability to collaborate with these tools and make and raise the bar on what might have been done otherwise? So it raises a challenge for the whole ecosystem. And that, I think, is both the blessing and the curse, right? Will teachers rise with the challenge, or will they only view it as a threat? And will we give them time and tools to adjust to that challenge? Because I think that's the real question here.
All right, what else is important to think about? You've got an idea of a contract between employers and employees, a lifestyle contract. What does that mean in real life?
What that means in real life, I think, is just a recognition that we need work to work for everyone.
Does it work for you?
I would say yes and no. I really think our generation were at that pinch point where we kind of sat between our parents and Gen Z, right? Our parents never had email, they never had text. You could go on vacation. When you came home, there was nothing, the only way
50,000 emails waiting for you.
You were only dependent on that rotary dial phone, right, for your employer to call. And on vacation, nobody interrupted you because mail took too long. But our generation had text, we had the web. It was an always-on environment, and it really didn't work for us if you think about it, and if we're really honest about it. And I think this generation has recognized that. My kids have seen that, and they're like, I'm not signing up for that. And so I do think we need a resetting, and it needs to work. But by the same token, I think we also need to be conscious of the trade-offs. Do we settle for a much lower growth economy than the one we in the United States have become accustomed to?
And should we?
I think there's a case for that.
Case to be made. What do we learn, do you think, from the Great Resignation, from the quiet quitting movement?
I think what we've learned is we really have to move away from that traditional one-size-fits-all deal that we forced many people into. And often that deal was calibrated, again, based on our experiences of work, to increasingly meeting more and more people on their individual terms and recognizing that, our workplaces are going to be in a state of flux. We're going to need to accommodate. But we do need some guardrails that are much more inclusive and equitable. And I'll come back to where we started with the Good Work framework. That's really what the WEF with Mercer are trying to do, is ensure that we've got a much more sustainable and equitable and inclusive future of work.
So give me an example of just what one company is doing really well that you think could raise the bar for others.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the organizations I love to talk about is Unilever. They've been a long-time client. They've been featured in 2 of my books. I really think the whole approach that they've taken to driving greater agility and inclusivity in the future of work has been fascinating. The forum did a case study on them and their framework for the future of work. And I really believe that what they're doing to meet more and more people on their individual terms, to ensure that work works for everyone, not just a select few, is just such a great example for everyone.
Fantastic. Ravin, thank you so much for stopping by the Hub Culture studio here again in Davos 2023, and I'm Edie Lush.